All right, everybody, welcome. Big breaking news. Of course, we've now heard that Tesla has achieved kind of like China's backing for full self driving. He met with the premier this weekend. We're going to share that with you. I've got Jeff Lutz joining us for this amazing, important news. He'll explain why it's so big for Tesla. Here's the news that we've seen here. Let me get this set up and ready to go. Sorry, guys. Here we go. So over the weekend, Elon Musk met with Premier Li Qiang today in China. We'll show you what that video looks like. We saw that, we heard that, just kind of unannounced, but he landed in Beijing on Sunday. And so let's share that video and then we'll get your thoughts.
See electric vehicles making progress in China. All cars will be electric in the future.
Okay, Musk in China then. Let's bring in Bloomberg's Jill Thesis in Hong Kong. Jill, Musk's visit as a surprise, as we say. What is he trying to accomplish exactly?
Well, Tom, it seems like it's all about Tesla, this surprise trip. I actually found it particularly, catching us off guard just because what we had been preparing for just about a week ago was a visit by Elon Musk to India, where he was expected to meet potentially with Prime Minister Modi. That, of course, he had postponed, saying he actually had some very heavy Tesla obligations. Not sure how much that's related, but now here he is in Beijing. He actually met with Premier Li Qiang, who was working as the top Communist Party official in Shanghai when Elon Musk just a few years ago put together that deal for the Tesla Gigafactory. It's critical, most important global production plant. Now it seems like what Elon Musk is ultimately trying to accomplish here is making some headway on getting full self-driving, what Tesla calls full self-driving. It's sort of the semi-autonomous driving functionality within Tesla cars approved in China. That's obviously been a pretty weighty obstacle for Tesla to ultimately get over, just because there's a lot of technology concerns, but also national security concerns. But it certainly seems like that is what Elon Musk is in China trying to clear that hurdle toward getting this Tesla technology in cars there.
And Jill, as part of this trip, we hear that they're deepening their relationship, Tesla, with Baidu, which, of course, it has one of the leading autonomous driving platforms in China. How significant is that partnership to pushing through and pushing past some of these hurdles?
Yes, exactly, Tom. I mean, presuming that partnership goes forward, that seems like that is what would enable Tesla to ultimately accomplish its goals of getting this technology into vehicles in China. So the nature of this deal, obviously still, I think, kind of coming into focus, what exactly happens there. But yes, it does seem like what Tesla would ultimately be able to accomplish is partnering with Baidu to get some of this, sort of self-driving, autonomous technology into cars. Again, I must stress that when it comes to this Tesla technology, what exists already in the United States and elsewhere is something that needs to be constantly sort of self-monitored, but ultimately it does kind of fulfill some of those, semi-autonomous needs. So yes, it does seem like partnering with Baidu on some of this technology, this navigation structure, would ultimately get Tesla to clear a pretty significant hurdle toward entering the market with some of this technology that would enable it to, provide technology that allows it to scale up, an incremental amount of revenue as it's displayed in these cars.
All right, so Jeff, thank you so much. This is big news, and we'll walk through exactly what was approved, what wasn't approved. But basically, Tesla was able to achieve 4 of the major different regulations that China had. So few people thought that they will ever be able to do full self-driving in China because of the the political scenario that's happening. But the reason why this is big, there's several fold, right? Not only is full self-driving going to generate more revenue for Tesla, but they're going to be able to become global. They'll be able to get that data that they need to be able to truly get all the edge cases. But more importantly, there's high likelihood now we're going to see just a slew of Chinese automakers partnering with Tesla. And more likely it might be in BYD. Jeff, tell me why you think this is a really important thing that just happened.
Yeah, just when everyone, was writing Tesla's obituary in China regarding, vehicle sales, regarding, the new Xiaomi vehicle. By the way, just advice, when you have these new companies, new product lines, you probably want to give it 6 months to a year to see how things play out. But just as everybody was kind of writing their obituary, Tesla said they're going to flip the script, and they're going to drive more revenues from their autonomous services. And this is the beginning. This isn't the end. This isn't everything is solved, everything's fixed. But this is a major, major step. And it really shows Tesla's position in China, China's trust in Tesla and Elon Musk. You get a meeting with the number 2 person in the government, and look how quickly things were moving in the background. You get that meeting, on a Sunday and Monday, and just to get that moving and get things moving as quickly as they are. That's not every company can do that. And the partnership side of it's is going to be very interesting to see, because I've often thought that the first partnership would probably be in the Western hemisphere for Tesla, and I still think that that's probably the case. But I do agree that this does open the door. Li Auto, the CEO of Li Auto discussed this openly. That they look at their vehicle and they look at how much they're spending inside of their vehicle for autonomy. It's several $1,000s. I think it's $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 or more. And they tore down a Tesla and they believe it's, south of $1,500. So they know that there's something to be had on the hardware efficiency side working with Tesla. And, they're no dummies. They see that, they don't have a geofenced robo taxi, network in the US, and they're driving this improvement towards full autonomy. And the sooner you get on board, the better. The other thing I would say about China is they will move much quicker than a 2 to 3 year integration timeline to get this into their vehicles. They iterate very rapidly, and they're even getting faster. So this is a competitive market. EV adoption is extremely high in China, and this is an incredible move for Tesla. And again, it just as everybody was, thinking like, oh, this is a hardware game, a hardware margins game, and it's over. Here comes Tesla with enabling this. And like you said, on the training side, this is going to be a big win. And I think, if you're Europe, you have to be looking at this and saying, okay, this is running in the US, it's running in Canada, it's now running in China. How far, honestly, how far do you want to be behind, as this ramps up?
Okay, so let's go through the list of things that was actually happened, that was approved. Actually, there's only 2 Chinese companies that are possibly going to compete in full self-driving and robotaxi. Everybody thinks, Huawei and Pony and all that. You can't have lidar. If you have lidar, it costs you $1,500 to outfit a car. Are you going to have 100,000 of them in a city? I just can't see how that happens. It's going to take you time to map everything. And then you need end-to-end neural networks, which Tesla has proven it works. Only 2 Chinese companies have said that they're heading in this direction. So let's take a look at all the things that are happening here. You've got, Tesla China Whip said this. Tesla's FSD's entry into China, there was a lot of news that can be viewed together. So one thing that happened was China's official media published this Tesla Vice President Grace Tao, her remarks on autonomous driving. She also mentioned 8.8, by the way. We need to talk about that because 8 is an incredibly lucky number for Chinese, and 8.8 is August 8th. That's when Tesla's going to make an announcement. There was a reason he chose 8.8. And so you can start seeing little nuggets being dropped by Tesla China about 8.8. And then, of course, enhanced autopilot price was reduced in China to the same level as US full self-driving. So it's now $9 per month. And then, of course, Elon landed in Beijing on Sunday. It's going to happen soon. It's going to happen fast. I wanted to show Grace Tao here. If you see this photo here, this is her on the left with the pink. She's amazing. Obviously, Tom Zhu was with them as well, but it was it's Grace that really has been representing Tesla in China, and she is amazing. Great person. Lucky for Tesla to have her. And so it started off with news that Baidu, which is a mapping service in China, partnered with Tesla. This was one of the critical things, right? Because obviously the government of China doesn't want, an American company to actually have access to all the maps and the data, the secret military locations and all that. They needed to make sure that it was a map from Baidu. That was announced several days ago. That's another topic, Jeff. We need to talk about how Elon Musk, being SpaceX, highly regulated, has been able to win over China and get their approval. So Tesla received in-principle approval to deploy its driver assistance system. It's still driver assistance, but the FSD training is very likely going to be announced at some point. Tesla did manage to clear two of the most important hurdles. So number one, reaching a mapping and navigation deal with Chinese tech giant Baidu and meeting requirements for how it handles data security and privacy issues, making sure that data stays in China. That's another topic, Jeff. Tesla is in China, is the most Chinese-made car. It's a Chinese company for all respects in China because 99% of all supplies are coming from Chinese companies. All the employees are Chinese. Approval for FSD in China could be a major revenue boost for Tesla and unlock new opportunities. So let me pause there, make comments, and then I'll come and describe the four things that Tesla had to achieve in order to win this approval.
Yeah, I mean, Baidu's a huge company. And you think of them, I mean, they're not, Google's amazing and Alphabet's amazing and massive, but they're kind of doing a lot of the search services, mapping services in China. They're a huge company. They're a beloved tech company in China. So Tesla doing a major partnership with them, is already a big deal. I mean, there's other companies that they could have potentially worked with, and they're working honestly with the biggest. And this is a huge step. And again, a couple of key milestones have been knocked down, in the process. And what happens, especially doing business in China, you want, number one, you need to go over, you need to show face, you need to build momentum and positive favor with the team. And this is what, they did. Tesla's a good citizen, in China. They've got, really good employment. Obviously they've had to do some reductions recently, but all companies in China have had to do, not all companies, but many companies have had to do some reductions of late just to flex their workforce. But yeah, as you said, they have that facility in Shanghai. It's over 95% locally sourced, which Chinese government really loves that you're not importing a bunch of material. Everything's, made locally. So they're a really good corporate citizen in China. And the real big reason they want Tesla there is, they are learning from Tesla. Tesla does not have an open, partnership agreement or a sharing agreement with any company. They didn't have to do that, but that workforce in Tesla, and that workforce in that area is relatively transient. People are moving around. They're getting that Tesla experience. Tesla's kind of setting the way in terms of how vehicle manufacturing, some of the best practices, and you're seeing other companies really take it and move quickly. So this is a big deal. China loves Tesla. And Elon's making sure that they're, in good favor. The local China team's also making sure they're in good favor. So this is a huge step for the company. They're going to get data. They're going to make progress. I think there's close to 2 million vehicles on the road. This is the biggest EV market, in the world, and it will probably be the biggest robo-taxi market in the world because they're just that far ahead. In terms of enabling these services. So this is the place for Tesla to be. This is really important for them to get this done.
Yeah, the largest market in the world. It is already the largest market for vehicle sales, by the way. I mean, it's just crazily bigger than the US. And then to do FSD there, to do Robo taxi there, you can imagine just the infrastructure and so forth. It's going to do very, very well there. So let's take a look what actually happened. You've got Tesla has launched enhanced autopilot subscriptions in China. So this is something that already happened just now, right? So $99 US dollars. Is that not a little suspicious, Jeff, that it's exactly the same amount for FSD? So right now it's enhanced autopilot, but right, they'll just flip the switch and turn it to FSD once they got the formal, approval. That's what it sure looks like. And then here's the 4 requirements. When we get to the 4 requirements, I'll have you reply to each one of them. This is the National Automotive Data Security Standards, and various regions have gradually lifted bans on parking and driving. So there was restrictions on Tesla specifically, right? They didn't want Teslas near certain airports, near certain buildings. The China Association of Automobile Manufacturers and the National Computer Network Emergency Response Technical Team Sorry, that's too long. I can't read all of it. They released a notice on the inspection of 4 safety requirements on automotive data processing on April 28th. The models produced by Tesla's Shanghai Gigafactory fully comply with the regulatory requirements and are the only foreign-funded enterprise to meet the compliance requirements. Thoughts on that? Hey, welcome, Xander.
Thanks, Herbert.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is China moving pretty quickly, and they're Teslas were prohibited in certain areas, and there were restrictions on them, and I would say the geopolitical atmosphere between the countries is not good. I think Elon's trying to basically persevere through that. He's not obviously disrespecting the U.S. and its needs and what it's trying to do, but he's also trying to make sure that his business thrives, and if these services will actually save lives. Remember, if you look at, and we should probably pull this data up at some point in the broadcast, but the fatalities per mile driven in China are and the data is not even it's significant. And so if this if FSD is performing as it is here in terms of doing quite well with that, imagine the impact, the outsized impact that this would have in China. And you really have to think through that. You really have to cut through then all the geopolitical noise and say, okay, is this going to basically save more humans? And also, is Tesla going to make a lot of money in the progress? And I think the answer to both could be yes. There's a lot of traffic too in the major cities. So there's a lot of reasons to get this deployed, to get it scaled, and to get it moving. And it looks like, and again, I know, and I read some of the comments too, like the government says one thing, does another. But it looks like they're actually moving on their regulations, and they've actually formally announced things. So that's a good thing. Now, Tesla still has to execute to work through the other milestones, and we can't have, obviously, I would say, any major issues between countries geopolitically, but they're on a great trajectory, and that partnership with Baidu is very important to China, and going to be very important to Tesla as well. There's mutual benefit there.
So I just looked up the data, and China has the most, which is at 63,000 people dying per year. That was in 2019. But the interesting data point is that the U.S. has the most when it comes to per 100,000, people. So of course, people there don't drive as many people in the U.S., but there's something about the U.S. also. Hey, welcome, Xander. And just wanted to ask you what your thoughts are on the stock. How important is this development to Tesla?
First of all, how's the audio? I'm just using the mic on the laptop.
Yeah, you sound good.
Okay. So, I mean, technically, this is what we've been training for. On the way up, you're supposed to learn a bunch of lessons. Don't get too bullish. On the way down, you're supposed to learn a bunch of lessons. So this is a reaction that we've been kind of talking about and predicting, that there could be this violent re-rating that occurs when a company is no longer viewed as a car company, right? Is it going to stop here? No one can predict how the market's going to interpret this, but the thesis is being validated by the market. So you have Elon going, and now why, right? The margins, everything that Jeff talked about, and Alexandra and you, and just the robotics, all of those things are playing out. This is the gamma squeeze. This is everyone who's short that's covering, everyone that was waiting to buy the dip. They're buying the dip, even though this isn't the dip. The dip was down at 140, but you're having people buying calls, which means that the market makers are delta hedging and they're buying shares. And so there's mechanics behind this. Is it going to sustain? You saw it in the morning. Everyone that was holding contracts closed out their positions, got a gain. Maybe some went short, and then you saw a reacceleration for the day, and we just hit 200. And so 200 is a huge psychological level. People are going to take profits. 195, if you recall, was a huge level. So there's going to be contemplation. Is this it? Am I going to get out? So that's kind of what's happening. There's a lot of psychology here at play. Not financial advice. I'm finally considering converting some shares into leaps and going long here. So some of course won out and did that last week or before earnings or whatever. But definitely be cautious. That doesn't mean that this is just gonna run. But this is where the thesis comes into play. How are you
Exactly.
guys feeling about it?
Well, I mean, so went up by $28 today, right? And the way I feel about this,
One Gordon.
I guess the way I think about it is like, okay, yeah, we're only at $200. It's like down from $400, but it's what you said. It's a thesis. The thesis was, why are we invested? Why am I invested in Tesla? Because it's a disruptive technology. They're not just making disruption on electric vehicles, but they're making disruption on full self-driving, autonomy, and robotaxi, and then the bots and energy, right? And when this as you see it move forward, and then despite the stock falling, you say, well, I don't get it. Why is the stock falling? Because there's actually improvement in full self-driving. You actually see the investments in data centers. Jeff and I just finished a show about how Tesla's actually the largest AI project in the world, according to Kathy Wood, and Elon said that that's the case. And so why people can't see this? Stock falls, people react because of the stock, but you and I, we're looking there going, this is. And then when you see little milestones like this, they're not little, but they add up. This is kind of just proof that this bet that we have is heading in the right direction.
Yeah.
What about you, Jeff? What's your thoughts? Yeah.
Real quick, Jeff, you're muted, but let me get a quick thought out. I just had a conversation with my dad regarding this thesis shift, because he's asking how does it move 16% or 18% in a day, and I think that's like the important thing to understand. Like Jeff absolutely called this. If margins are what 17% on 390,000 units, what is that going to look like when they deliver 450 and when they reaccelerate? So, and what do margins look like when you're selling FSD? And so that's the real thing that the market is seeing here, is that you have margins that you'll be able to bring to the line. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just it's different investors reacting to different things. If you're a long-term investor, you're not reacting to each quarterly print as much as if you're kind of a day in, day out weekly trader. And you look, I mean, they've missed the last 3 earnings estimates, or EPS has been contracting. But in the meantime, this has been kind of like a coiled spring where it's been trying to find this bottoming process with gross margins. Let's start with gross margins, because operating margins are different. And what you hear and what you read on X is everybody's trying to like conflate things and trying to honestly confuse things. On the gross margin side, Tesla shipped, honestly, 25-30% less vehicles than they did the prior quarter, but there was very little gross margin compression, which tells you that they were honestly cranking on the per unit COGS and fixing that. And also, it also tells you there really wasn't as much of a movement on pricing as a lot of people were talking about. And there's data that actually shows this, by the way, too. Tesla's done, basically, they did a COVID correction, and then for the last year, they've honestly, pricing's been fairly stable relative to COGS decline. So in terms of, I think what people are seeing, and Xander started getting into it, is we're probably near the end of that compression on the margin side. It's hard to say. A lot of things could happen. A lot of things are unpredictable. The consumer could be unpredictable. But it looks like with Tesla made some moves. They cut out a tremendous amount of OpEx, both in the factory side. This is labor. This is labor used to make vehicles. It's also labor used to get, material to the line and so forth. So they cut labor out of the factories, which is going to hit, vehicle COGS. They also cut OpEx out all the way up through the sales side of it, and the sales side of it will appear between ASP. The sales cost actually will appear between ASP. It's above gross margin. It'll appear between ASP and MSRP. And so they cut out of that side as well. They cut out of the OpEx side in the offices. So that's going to impact their ability and how much they can spend. So it's a large number. It's probably on the order of $1.5 to $2 billion. We don't know if it's even done yet. Tesla may decide to do more moves, but as that rolls off at the end of this quarter, and you look at the second half of this year, on the other side of this, they should be growing unit volume again. We talked about what happened with the stranded inventory in Q1. We talked about a number of things which also tied up and confused the cash picture. So Q1 was actually a bit of a trap in a number of ways, I would say. I mean, no doubt Tesla had execution issues on the Model 3. Of course, you had the inventory issues with the Berlin and the Red Sea attacks, which were out of their control. But it definitely was a trap from the bear side, because if you believe that those were long-term systemic issues, you were getting bared up on that news. But if you believe that was actually stranded inventory that they were going to clear up in this quarter, and time will tell. We'll see when they actually report this quarter. But Tesla said that's what they're going to do on the earnings call. Well, then that clears up a bunch of cash. They cut headcount. That's going to free up a bunch of cash. And then they're going to grow unit volumes back again. Even before these newer models are launched, they're going to get the Model 3 ramped up again. Their Cybertruck is increasing every quarter. They have vehicles with unconstrained demand today. That's what people understand. Unconstrained demand means you can't fulfill all of that. That what would be the demand if you had infinite supply. And the Model 3 is in that situation right now where they can't supply enough of them. Cybertruck's in that situation where they can't supply enough of them. So, it's hard to say, again, where this is an outsized move, definitely kind of a coiled spring. We'll see what happens from here. It's a big move. I mean, technically there's some indicators we should probably be looking at too. I think we're, now between the 50 and the 100 day on it. So it'll be something interesting to watch. We're still not at the 200 day, which is a big technical indicator. I think that's over 220 on the stock.
Precisely 221.68. You got it.
Yeah. So yeah, Tesla. This was a big move. And let's see if it can hold it. Again, this is news. Okay. Tesla. Still, if you look at quarter to quarter, I think people are still gonna be looking at, okay, is the volume growth coming back? Are we going to be meaningfully over 400,000 units again? Because we need to stabilize gross margins. We need to generate that cash to do this infrastructure spend and to keep this whole flywheel turning. So I think that's where people will be looking next. But this is obviously a great move today.
Yeah. People are totally underestimating, right? Again, I see things a little differently than most people. Maybe I'm totally wrong, but the news that FSD is going to now be expanded into China, and soon it's apparently going to happen also in Europe. It's going global. It's improving all the time. And here we are, people still going, how many cars will Tesla sell this year? Are they going to hit 50, the same year as what they had last year? Very soon, at some point, the world will wake up and realize that I'm only going to buy a Tesla which has all the cameras around it and has the FSD capability in it, because the value of that car keeps going up as the potential for robotaxi happens. And certainly once robotaxi is here, nobody's going to buy another car again, electric vehicle or not, if you don't have the capability of becoming robotaxi. So either two things will happen. One is car companies will come lining up to partner with Tesla, licensing that technology, or B, Tesla's cars value will go up. More people will buy Teslas because it's a clear differentiator between any other car company today. And let's say that, yes, a couple companies to have their own version, fine. All of a sudden, the auto industry has gone from 168 car companies to 2, to 3, to 4. And that's the only cars that you'll buy. I just don't know why people haven't clued into this at this point. Tesla sales of vehicles will skyrocket, even if robotaxi is not quite here yet. And once robotaxi becomes available, it's like, why would anybody buy any other car? I mean, certainly, I mean, I'm saying that's, facetious, what's the word? I'm saying that a little bit facetiously, what's the word?
Yeah, that's the word.
Yeah, because obviously it's like, people still need to buy the cars that they can afford, the cars that's available, but this is big news, right?
It's all the steps, Herbert. It's like we've been playing these things out in our mind, and we kind of fast forward to the end of like where we see this. Like, why would anybody buy another car if these cars are actually going to be value per dollar cheaper and give you all these great experiences? Why would anybody be doing this? And that's what we've been kind of, if you're bulled up on the name and you're long term, that's how you think. But it's all those intermediate steps that have to happen along the way. I do think the market wants to see Tesla return to unit volume growth, but also if the market sees that a lot of the revenue is starting to come from software, they're going to be very happy about that too. So it's just Tesla needs to print it, and we haven't had a quarter yet where let's see them print a quarter with a massive uptake in in FSD. Let's see them do a number of these things. So they still have to execute, but the table is certainly set.
Yeah, and like this morning, my dad was asking me about what he sees on the little box with the talking heads and hybrids, and asking me about that and saying, well, look, the market is choosing this, and of course the talking heads are talking about this stuff, and when since we're bullish and we're looking at that finish line, what does that look like on just on the car business? Never mind all this other stuff. You're hybrids. Well, why would you want multiple systems? And so I just go through all of the counters to this narrative that's being spun. And someone on Fox News says, oh, they should be firing on all cylinders and oil, and oh, not oil, haha, electrons, and and that's the reality, is that they're just talking up Ford. Yes, Ford will probably make it and still not go bankrupt like everyone else. But the reality is, like, BYD is someone who's making some margins. The whole point was apparently Ford showed $135,000 loss per vehicle or something like that. And so my dad was asking me, how is that even possible? So I explained to him, how factories and R&D and infrastructure, you have to build all of this stuff. So they're just it's accounting tricks. But the ultimate point is that you're like, right now today we're going to have just unimaginable dunking that occurs on all of these bulls that were, I mean, technically they were correct to sell, and they're trying to time the market. The question becomes, did they buy back in, right? When they heard that earnings call, and you hear, I won't name any names, but the financial people that look at spreadsheets all day, did they buy back in when they got the confidence from management that this year they will deliver more than 1.8 compared to 23. So that's really the problem. Is it's impossible to time the market. This is an example of it. You don't see this coming. It's a surprise thing that happens. If you were holding calls, you did really, really well. But if you weren't, did you get back in? We miss somebody on this show, and the question becomes, did you get back in? Did that call? Did you listen to it? And did you find that confidence? So in my opinion, this is what we're seeing. We're seeing shareholders find the confidence in management and realize Elon's back, quote unquote. I don't think he ever left, but I understand the thesis that they had.
Okay, let's review a little bit to catch people up what happened today. So you got Elon Musk met with China's premier in Beijing yesterday. Here's the video of him actually there. He's physically there, and then you'll see that. Let's see. Here's the video. That's Grace Tao. She's the VP at Tesla. Tom Ju was there as well, and so there was a very important scenario. So what they showed, what happened was, it looks like that Tesla's met all 4 requirements of the National Automotive Data Security Standards, And also regions are now gradually lifting bans on parking and driving. So it's going to take a few more, I don't know how long it will be, but very shortly they will approve FSD. The models produced by Tesla's Shanghai Gigafactory fully comply with the regulatory requirements and are the only foreign-funded enterprise to meet the compliance requirements. The various regions who had little, restrictions, like the airports and certain places, they didn't want Teslas that had cameras all around them. They have been lifting restrictions on parking and driving bans for smart connected vehicles such as Tesla. As one of the first companies to pass a national authoritative vehicle data inspection, Tesla now complies with 4 compliance requirements. Here it is down here. You can read it. It says anonymizing external facial information. So it sounds like the cameras, you have to anonymize who you see. Not collecting cabin data by default. So the person who's driving it must turn it on to say, yes, it's okay for you to capture my internal cabin. Few people realize that Tesla has a camera in the cabin. So if I'm looking like I'm not looking, it'll beep if I'm not touching the steering wheel, or it'll beep if I'm looking at my phone. It knows that. Processing cabin data within the vehicle, so you can't take that data and transfer it to another data center, and providing clear notification when processing personal information. Tesla established a data center in Shanghai in 2021, and that's where they're keeping all of the data storage. It's localized here in Shanghai in the data center, it's there. It doesn't get moved outside of China. And also introduced third-party authoritative institutions to audit the company's information and security systems. And so now they are looking good. The other bit of news that kind of went nobody cut track was Elon said this a few days ago. We believe version 12 of FSD is ready for supervised FSD in left-hand drive countries, which China is. So only a few countries are actually right-hand drive. So that's another hint, by the way, that this FSD is not only going to be, one announcement today is that China has agreed to it, but also Europe is on its way to be approved, and other countries as well. So what do you think, Jeff? Like, with this approval, would the U.S. somehow turn around and say, okay, we better not let China do this unilaterally and become, robo-taxi ready and AI and smart cars, and then we're going to say no and we're going to have regulations? Does this, in a way, move other countries?
Yeah, this does put pressure on other countries, and we're going to be in this loop that I think is going to accelerate, and it's actually going to correlate to the pace of training compute and improvement in the FSD releases we're getting. I think we're going to be in a series of announcements, and we're going to be getting ping pong back and forth. Okay, and I think it's going to be 2 or 3 things that are very positive that continue to get announced, and then obviously the U.S. and the continued investigations into the older autopilot software will still be out there, hanging out there. But I think you're going to hear other countries where Tesla enters and has some formal agreement to be driving. You're going to hear more announcements happening, and you're going to hear, maybe the first FSD partnership is announced. Elon alerted to on the earnings call that they're in discussions with a major auto OEM. And so all these things are kind of a flywheel turning. And that major auto OEM now sees Tesla working with China. And that if it's a major auto OEM, they probably sell vehicles in China. So this becomes a flywheel that starts turning. And again, the positive news is going to be, it's going to start with the release itself. And how good is the release in the vehicle? How quickly is it improving? And then how quickly is it improving will actually drive the adoption rate in the US. More people will turn it on and keep it on and continue to buy it every month. So everything starts there. To me, that's the core of it. And Tesla's setting that up with all the training compute they're buying and all the focus and effort they're putting on improving that. That's the core of it. And then what's orbiting that is going to be various countries and partnerships that are announced. And we're going to be, I think, in this whirlwind. And so you're going to have this hardware business that's going along, right? And Tesla's trying to figure out how many cars are Tesla going to ship in this quarter and so forth. But meanwhile, you're going to have this FSD business that's at massively high gross margins, and you're going to see these successive partnerships and countries coming on board. And yes, it's going to put pressure on the ones that haven't jumped on yet, because they have to look at what they have and they have to project out where they're going to be. And this is high stakes, because if you have something and you're burning cash every quarter, every year, and you don't think you're going, you're not where Tesla is today, and you don't think you're going to be where they're going to be a year or two from now, then you got to cut it and you have to jump. So there's going to be a lot of hand wringing, I think, in boardrooms and in government offices, over the next several months. This is very disruptive.
Okay, there's so many things I want to talk about, but first, let's start with don't mess with Elon. What is Elon? Importance of Elon. He posted this an hour ago. Looks like he just posted this. So it looks like this is the belt buckle, and it says "Don't mess with Tesla." He put the Tesla logo there, or the Tesla logo there. Don't mess with Tesla. Elon is incredibly important. We need to make sure he is voted in on the annual shareholder meeting, or approve his comp package re-ratified. Who else in this world can go and get meetings with the top level, dignitaries, the leaders of every country, and who is begging for him, saying, please come to us, please build your businesses here, we'll help you. And he's able to negotiate. If he's able to negotiate, guys, think about this. This is China. He's able to negotiate with China to have an American company. Of course, right? It's, in many ways, it's the most Chinese-made car in China. He's able to negotiate that in China and be able to get approval for FSD, and which soon will be Robo taxi, and then helping China in many ways is a win-win for both parties. If he can do this there, what about the Western world? What about the rest of the world? And who else can do this? Now, we can talk about this too, Jeff. I know you have a lot to say about it, but the U.S., it's embarrassing. It's absolutely embarrassing how he's being treated here in the U.S. It's crazy. It's just the world is upside down right now to realize what's happening here. But if China becomes known as electric vehicle powerhouse, which they are now, and then you will see one after another dropping licensing this technology from Tesla, the Chinese. What happens to the German auto manufacturers? What happens to the US auto manufacturers? If you sell a car that doesn't have capabilities, not even for robo-taxi, but just full self-driving, incredibly safe, makes it easier and more comfortable for the driver to drive. So what do you think about this? Don't mess with Tesla, his badge, and the importance of Elon.
Yeah, I think that was the shareholder vote is open, and one of the votes is I guess moving the company headquarters, and so I think that's kind of a nod to that and the importance of that to Tesla to do that, and that he's put himself there too in the center. So he's moved his life there as well. But yeah, it is not easy to go to these countries and to negotiate. You have to work inside of their laws. You have to work inside of their culture to be effective. And I think some people get confused because people don't understand. Like, well, what about free speech? What about this? What about that? And what Elon has often said he's always said is like, look, I'm going to abide by the laws of the countries and the jurisdictions that I'm working in. And that's honestly the only answer. You can't just be a nomad doing whatever you want, going wherever you want. But I think, he shows them a level of respect, and they show him a level of respect probably many times over back in these various countries. That's why he's constantly they view when he visits, they view it as a business opportunity to employ tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people eventually. And they view it as a way to do business better. They've looked at what he's done in the auto industry. They look at what he's doing with energy. They look at what he's doing with AI, and they want access. And this is what you're seeing. I think he will. If punched, I think he will counter punch back. And I think that's what you're seeing. A lot of in the U.S. I don't agree with everything that he says or does. But at the same time, I do agree with the need to defend yourself, regardless of, and I do think he's being unfairly targeted here. So it does says a lot. It does say a lot that these other countries are partnering with him. He's getting a meeting with the number 2 person, in China, on a kind of on a moment's, I don't say on a moment's notice. It may have been pre-planned, but a lot of things had to come together, and they don't have to take these meetings. A lot of these meetings could be canceled based on geopolitical concerns. So it just shows you they have a tremendous amount of respect for Elon and what he does, and it's great for Tesla. And this is really good timing as well in terms of the shareholder vote and everything coming up. We're watching in front of our eyes is the company transitioning again from this kind of hardware only, where most of the revenues are coming from, into him setting the company up for software as a services revenue. It started with that 8.8 Robo taxi announcement, and in really all the work that's been done over the last year, switching to this end-to-end solution, and believing in it and investing in it and putting the dollars of the company into it. He knew that there would be this margin compression that's occurring. We're down to 5.5% on the operating side. That will improve, I think, with these reductions coming in, and then Tesla's kind of solving the inventory, temporary issues from Q1. But definitely still a challenge of needing to spend on this compute and to really transform the company. But when the bet comes through, obviously it's going to be massive.
When
Would you guys?
the bet comes through, that's confidence right there. I just want to point that out. That's Jeff confident. Go ahead, dude.
Oh gosh, I mean, we're long-term bulls. We all have tremendous confidence that this was going to happen. It's funny how other people will tell you that Tesla's a car company, and look at the auto margins. Guys, what's going to happen to auto margins when FSD comes here? And then they just poo-pooed it, and then watch them. This is the part that irritates me. They'll come back and they'll start saying, amazing, Robotaxi. I've been saying it all along. Okay. Who do you think is going to partner with Tesla first, right? So, Jeff, this is one thing you have been pointing out. And again, only one of those lone voices. You said this in January. You said that you thought that there was going to be an announcement of FSD. This was the darkest of all days of Tesla, that there could be an announcement of FSD. Then, since then, we did start seeing FSD 12, becoming more something. People are starting to realize it's there. And then, of course, in the last earnings call, Elon said that we are in discussions with one large OEM, maybe going to happen by the end of this year, maybe even 2. Now you see this, which is the regulation. I think that the Chinese automakers, many of them will license this from Tesla now that this has been a kind of like, the regulations has been eased. And some of us have been thinking that I always thought that it was going to be a U.S. company, Ford. Some people thought it was going to be BYD. BYD is the second largest electric vehicle company in the world. They briefly got the largest company, beating Tesla for 1/4. But they already have a major partnership with batteries with Tesla. They both see each other as partners. And, BYD has not made any movements in terms of AI. They could very well be the partner at this point, now that the regulations and the concerns about keeping the security, carefully, controlled. What's your thinking about who Tesla would partner with?
Yeah, I've said that. This is what I've said. The priorities are, one, get the geographic expansion done inside of Tesla. So get FSD out of North America, get it into China, get it into the rest of Asia, get it into Europe. That has to be the priority for Tesla, because that's going to immediately unlock revenue. And it's also kind of where their direct resources can be focused. But soon after, and in the conversations can start in parallel, would be the an FSD partnership. I would think with a Western auto company, given where Tesla's team is located. That's the other thing you have to think about. Co-location of teams to do this work. It doesn't eliminate a Chinese partner eventually. I'm just saying, I think the first would be a partner from the West, from a Western country. So that's how I see it playing out. Again, first, first focus on geographical expansion inside of Tesla, then a Western partner. But we'll see.
Okay, welcome, Brian. Brian Wang is a tech futurist. He has incredible research that he does in his blog, Next Big Future. I've had one-on-one interviews with him very well recently. And the one that we just did recently that you all should be watching is the one where he explains to you how much compute Tesla actually has. And it's way more than people are realizing. And he breaks it down in terms of the research, and he found the facts of why he's able to claim this is how much Tesla actually has. And of course, Elon confirmed it just a few days ago when he said that Tesla has spent $10 billion in AI compute. Welcome, Brian. What's your thoughts about this partnership with FSD? Or with this, it's heading towards to preliminary approval for FSD in China.
You're muted. You're muted, Brian. Welcome, by the way.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So one of the things I think people who aren't as familiar with the FSD and Tesla story is that the analysts, Gary Black, stuff like that, they always roll up the FSD blended into the regular car profits, which is a huge problem if FSD becomes really popular, because FSD is the full profits of a full car. Tesla makes $7,000, $8,000 of profit per car.
Right.
So if you buy it straight up, that's $8,000. And then if you buy a subscription, that's $1,200 that you get over the next 6 years. So one, because it was blocked from China for so long because of regulatory and other things, the people who bought Tesla cars in China are the wealthier people in China. They got loaded the cash. Over half of the luxury goods in the world are sold in China. So they, as whatever, the people say, okay, economic problems in China, all that kind of thing. All they have to do is not buy an LV bag and then buy a FSD in China, and then, they can have a large adoption rate, right? So just catching up to US adoption levels, 20% over several years would be 300,000 FSD potential, just straight up purchases. It could be like half purchases, half subscriptions, like that, because it's just, these are the wealthiest people in China who have the Tesla cars, right? And that would be, 300,000, the equivalent of car sales. So when, people say, oh, hand wringing, maybe we don't get to 1.8 million cars. It's cars plus FSD. So that's one of the main points I want to make.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So what about the margin, guys? I mean, the margins for Tesla this is the whole point of Tesla, of Elon saying that, we're going to become a subscription company. We're moving towards that. And if FSD, again, even if Robo-taxi doesn't become a real thing for a long time, if FSD continues to improve and people want to buy FSD and it goes global, the margins, as Brian was trying to point out, it's equivalent to the margins that Tesla's selling now. So I thought you were headed this way, Brian. You were going to say that in China, if they wanted to, they can actually reduce the price of a Tesla there by $7,000 or $8,000 if you buy FSD, if they wanted to.
They could do that too. So they have a lot of optionality in terms of how aggressively they can price things. They can, charging FSD, other things to move more cars. I'm not sure they would do that. I think they would have to see what the initial response is, which in terms of stock movement, when they did those X posts where they said, 1 million batteries, 4680 batteries made, when they say 100,000 subscriptions, 200,000 subscriptions incremental in the United States or 200,000 in China, those would be big movements. In terms of margin, if they straight up sold the cars, every 21,000 FSD full purchases is 1% on gross margin, because that's $250 million. If you do 200,000 subscriptions, that's 1% on margin in the year, but that's incremental each year, where I get another 1% next year if they didn't cancel out. And then if I'm getting the subscriptions, incrementally increasing margins. So all of the analysts who are saying, okay, I run a flat margin thing of 18% flat, 20% flat. And then they'll have to say, okay, it's going to be incrementally going up each year. and like Meet Kevin does something where it's like, okay, if we go to 20% margins, which you get 4% just from the layoffs, going from 18% to 22, then the stock should be worth $360, $400 just from reasonable sales. Like I think he was running something where it's like 2.25 million cars sold in 2026 with 20% margin. He had something like some $400 price in 2026. So if this moves cars and increases margins up to, you could have back to 30% margins in 2026, 2027, right? And that's in a modest adoption rate scenario. The big adoption rate scenario for China is they have over $700 billion of costs from car accidents every year. The data I have is 2016, but basically they have about 250,000, 300,000 deaths per year, and then more accidents on top of that. So if they can show 10x, 20x safer unsupervised, China could say, I see the numbers, and the engineers that run those things, and they say, okay, everyone, all China car companies must use Tesla FSD. They could just blanket just say that, and then have some boost into make this change, bundle it with insurance, and that's where you can get to 100% adoption in China of FSD. And they're the fastest adopters of EVs. They're already at like almost half EVs now of their 25, 30 million.
NEVs, new EVs, not
new EVs.
BEVs.
Yeah, right. No, I think it's pretty close. They 10 million, 50 million on the, and if it goes up, adoption rate to 20 to 70% by the next 2 years, 80%, then you can look at almost 20 million cars new each year. That would suddenly require them all to go. One, they could just do it themselves, where like the auto and those guys could say, yes, it's a more economical thing to do, but the impetus that the government could have is required.
Yeah, I think I love the points. When you look at, you're talking about net income per vehicle, and Tesla's somewhere in that, depending on which vehicle and which trim, $5,000 to $7,000 or $8,000 per vehicle, and this basically doubles it every time somebody buys it, and power in that.
We're losing you, Jeff.
Nobody, other auto manufacturer has that.
We're losing you. You're going
issue.
in and out, Jeff. We're going in and out.
I'll go off.
Okay, so let's recap for folks to find out to actually know what's happening. So today we actually, yesterday Elon visited Premier in China, and apparently Tesla has met all 4 requirements to be able to, offer enhanced autopilot in China, and that is on path to be able to offer FSD, which they said will happen sometime in the next several weeks or months. They don't know exactly when, but it will happen. So various regions have lifted restrictions on parking and driving bans for Tesla smart Teslas. Tesla had to anonymize the external facial information. They cannot collect cabin data by default. They need to process the cabin data within the vehicle and providing clear notification when processing personal information. And then they established a data center in Shanghai. They did this in 2021, but it's local data storage. So all the data needs to stay there. So when he met with the premier, looks like that they've approved it. Let's just watch really quickly his visit. Oops, it's beginning from the beginning here.
The electric vehicles making progress to China. All cars will be electric in the future.
So that's what he said. And then let's drive it to the beginning here. You can see the This is Grace Tao on the left there in the pink. She's Tesla's vice president that represents Tesla, and Tom Ju was there as well.
Who was working as the top Communist Party official in Shanghai when Elon Musk just a few years ago put together that deal for the Tesla Gigafactory. It's critical, most important global production plant. Now it seems like what Elon Musk is ultimately trying to accomplish here is making some headway on getting full self-driving, what Tesla calls full self-driving. It's sort of the semi-autonomous driving functionality within Tesla cars approved in China. That's obviously been a pretty weighty obstacle for Tesla to ultimately get over, just because there's a lot of technology concerns, but also national security concerns. But it certainly seems like that is what Elon Musk is in China trying to clear.
So again, guys, this is massive, right? Because this is China, and China is supporting Tesla. They've allowed them to do full self-driving. It looks like it's all going to be approved. Everybody kept saying, right? One of the biggest bears was Chanos, and Jim Chanos was on being interviewed, and he said the reason why I'm so short of Tesla is because they're so heavily dependent on China. So that is true, right? A significant amount is cars are sold in China, but if China is actually very supportive of Tesla and is actually a partner of Tesla, then the opposite is true, which is Tesla's future is amazing. I mean, it's just a big deal. Once Tesla signs a deal to do full self-driving in China, I believe, and I think a few of us here believe, that many of the automakers in China is going to license this. And once they start licensing it, it's like a snowball. Everyone else will start following along, because you can't be last. You can't be the third. It's going to take you 3 years to catch up, and you need to make that decision now. So at very least one or two will certainly sign. And then, of course, I think that because of this happening in China, this also improves and increases the chances that this will be approved in the US. The other big argument that people had about Tesla's Robo taxi is that it'll never happen in my lifetime because regulations have to be approved. China could just at a snap of the finger say Robo taxi approved for everybody in this country, as long as you meet these criteria.
Can I ask a question if Jeff or Brian want to comment on what you said? It's related, but you guys have any comment to what Herbert just said?
One thing that I'm thinking about is that, as the good news around FSD and China come out, and 12.4 and all that kind of stuff, that as we push up through, 230, that key, 2 year long downtrend and the 200-day moving average. And even now is that, you mentioned Chanos, there could be the short squeeze that could happen, right? I think it's starting a bit now, but I don't think they were really getting out yet. They were like 100-some million shares, 106 million shares, but they're kind of like only like net 1 million went out over the last few days. So that if that happens, then we could really rip fast in terms of like, if the news is there, the fundamentals of FSD, re-rate PE based on it's a real auto company, which none of the analysts say, okay, I priced in, FSD is a separate thing. I priced in all this other stuff. They haven't done that. So when a licensing deal happens, then they have to price in the more negative they are about Tesla, the more non-Tesla cars there are that can become Tesla profits. So if they say X% sign up, non-Tesla cars sign up, even if it's 2 to 4 years in the future, right? Then that massive thing, they're forced to recognize it, right? So that, and then they'll be chasing it because of the whole short covering thing that happens.
Yeah, it's interesting just thinking through the mechanics. And I wish, I think the 30-day trial period is coming to a close here pretty soon. I wish Tesla would have put a survey out and published some information. Just, hey, you're on the free trial. Are you likely to subscribe? Yes or no. I think that would have been, in advance of just, are they going to subscribe or not? It would have been great to know from a survey perspective where people were at. So I think that's a really important data point out of the US. Not that it's, the end all be all. And by the way, when you hear adoption rate information posted on X, ask the person, did they get it from Tesla or not? Because all of the other data is mostly BS. It's either old or it's being interpolated, or there's people that don't even know what the difference between FSD beta and, you know, enhanced autopilot or FSD even are, and they're trying to use a global number and they're confusing the hell out of everyone. Make sure it's a data point from Tesla where we understand how many vehicles are in play and how many people have downloaded the subscription. So only Tesla is really going to have this information. So I wish they would have put out a survey. I think that would have been very, very helpful. And I think this all goes back to the core offering and how, you know, how good is it, and how quickly is it improving. For me personally, like, this is, you know, I've bought it up front, and I bought it when it was much worse. So I'm not a good reference point. We need to understand, you know, the fact that they push. I think I think in week 2 or 3, I think 900,000 people are using it. And where is it at the end of week 3? Where is it in week 4? That would be the key data points. Are we well over 1 million people driving? That would be an interesting thing if Tesla were to announce that out of the US. And then again, what's the likelihood that they're going to pick up and continue with it? So, and it's great to see Tesla coming out with successive quick releases as well, you know, improving the situation. I posted this over the weekend. I can't wait to drive or to be driven in the release that was built when Tesla said that they're not training compute constrained. I think that would be that's going to be interesting to see the performance of that release.
I want to address a point that some people still think and say that have you not seen that all these Chinese companies are creating their version of full self-driving? They're also doing demos. They're also going to license this. Well, you know, another person said Huawei, Xiaomi, BYD, Xiaopeng, NIO, many work in FSC in China now. It is true. But you got to ask the question, are they using lidar? LiDAR is $1,500 US dollars per car to outfit. They need to do LiDAR. They need to spend all that time to map all the data. Are they using neural nets, or are they coding everything? So this is a chart that was offered by Altimeter Capital, and they did a full analysis, and they showed you that you got 2 things, camera only or HD mapping and LiDAR. So a lot of the companies are all still made the bet on LiDAR, and that's where they are. Only 2 companies, I think it's Baidu and Huawei, if I'm correct. I know it's Huawei and Li Auto. Yeah.
Huawei, yeah.
Huawei and Li Auto are the only 2 that have already announced that they're going to go camera only and that they need to go end to end. And a few of them started doing end to end a year ago, but they got a long way to catch up. They need to do 2 things: change everything to vision only and then switch to neural nets. Mobileye is the only company that was doing vision only, but they did not switch to neural nets. So, you know, it's like, it's one thing for people to say, hey, can't you see all these cars? Like, hey, Waymo and Cruise, they're already offering Robo taxi in all these cities, 7 cities in the US. Yes, but they're not going to achieve. We're not talking about apples and apples here. You know, talking different things here. So I don't know.
Yeah.
This is just
Volume
another
scale.
thing that. And volume scale, right? That if you're doing neural net, if you truly believe that neural net's the answer, you need data. To get data, you need to be global, not just one city. You need to have global data being tracking for years.
Yeah, I think the one other one not on this chart is Comma, right? Isn't Comma doing camera only with neural nets?
And neural nets and end to end only, correct? They're there, but they're so small and they don't have the data. But yes.
Yeah, the question always comes back to, when you're trying to analyze this opportunity for a company, is can they volume scale, and can they scale the unit economics, and does the business work? Like, does the business work at scale? We know all of these businesses are broken when they're not at scale, except for Tesla, by the way, because Tesla's got that per vehicle, on the inference side, they've got that cost structure down so low. That they're probably still doing okay, but these other business, I think Cruise has lost a net $11.5 billion to date. They lose a couple $1 billion a year operating. They've obviously ceased operations, so they've slowed down some of the losses and they cut a bunch of people. But the point is what Herbert's saying here is you have to look at, can they volume scale and can they economically scale? And you got to analyze what they're doing from a network infrastructure perspective, from a hardware perspective in the vehicle, and can it scale? In the end, when you actually put all the companies through both of those filters, it really only comes down to maybe one or two that come out. So that's where you won't hear this from the analogy. You'll hear this, they had John McNeil on, who's a former Tesla president who's now on the board of GM. He was on CNBC last week. He says, well, Tesla's going to be the third in the US in terms of if they do have their robotaxi, they'll be number three. But at what scale and at what profitability? So you have to look at the vectors of profitability and profitability at scale and volume. And you have to look at them all together. You have to pass them through that filter.
Do you guys believe?
Sorry, Herbert and I talked about this in a prior video where I talked about the business plan of those lidar-based companies. So one, you need 8 lidar per car, and that's what the Apollo had. And plus, you need other millimeter wave radar and all those kind of things. They only were making 200,000 auto-grade lidar among 80 companies back 2 years ago. I'm not sure. I don't think they've improved that much in the years since. There's 5 major companies doing that. So one, getting enough lidar for 1 million robotaxis for one company would mean you need a factory producing 8 million lidar. So that takes time to scale. And I haven't seen any announcements of big factories like that. Huawei might be doing the most, but I don't think it's scaling to that amount yet either. In terms of the business plan, they're spending $50,000 to $250,000, $400,000 per car with lidar and stuff, and they're buying their own cars. So again, if you go to, as Jeff was saying, going to scale, if we're saying 1 million is kind of in the beginning of Uber scale, that means on the low end, $50 billion of net spend to get there. If it's $50,000 car, if you're $150,000, that's $150 billion. So again, getting to Uber scale means Uber losses, so going from $2-3 million losses before you got many cars, like 250 cars. If you go up to that 1 million cars, you're like eating $10 billion, $20 billion losses per year to get to that end point. And your competitors, your DDs, your Ubers can just say, I will kneecap you with 10-20% cost cuts in the cities where you're at to choke you out, baby in the crib, I'll choke you out. So, and then they can do deals with, Tesla and stuff like that to get that business. And Tesla can go to scale instantly with the 4 million fleet, 8 million fleet in 2 years, can immediately get to scale, which none of the other plans have. So as Jeff says, all their other plans suck, which was discussed by Brad Gerstner and Bill Gurley in their thing, was that your economics are terrible if you're buying all your own vehicles and doing all that stuff. And
I've got to run in a bit, but I wanted to ask you guys this question. So everyone here is in the United States? Yep. So I, like, as an American, and I'm an immigrant, but I do not understand, how did Elon not get invited to the AI space now? Like, this is a level of I'm confused that, like, you literally have the one person that's warning that we need regulation, you need to make sure, while everyone else is looking at money and going to chase the dollar, right? The everything that we're being brainwashed about how bad capitalism is and how dangerous and all of this stuff that the young kids that I hire are seeing. What do you guys think? Like, how come this American company that's able to network across the world, the whole China United States beef that is being communicated, that I don't pay too much attention about, but I do follow. How? Can you just rant and let's go down this path. I think it's important.
I think it's basically the Twitter X deal. Basically, Elon, and also the fact that he's non-union. That's another thing. So those two things, I think, were the reasons why Elon and X and Tesla got a bit branded as enemies. So that those are things that I think are the main thing: non-union, and then the X platform creating a neutral platform for communication.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Elon, he counterpunches pretty direct as well. So, I mean, calls the president names, and I'm not a huge fan of the current administration, but at the same time, you have to respect the office. So there's probably something there. They don't respect Elon, by the way. So in the end, the bigger person honestly has to be the government. The government has to serve the people. Okay. So the government has to figure out who are the right leaders, who should we be elevating, who should we making sure that we're turning capital dollars to, that we're going to get the greatest returns back from. And quite frankly, this White House should be reaching out. They should be pulling them in and say, look, let's bury what's happened in the past. We know we don't agree on various topics and issues. That's fine. But as it relates to AI, as it relates to EV, as it relates to clean energy, we need your help. We need your brain power. And oh, by the way, we're going to stop investigating you and with multiple different agencies in the government. But that's the problem. The problem is all that stuff is going on in the background, and it's horrible. Okay. So Elon doesn't have, he doesn't have the ability to write. It's constantly, his companies are being sued. They're being investigated. He's being personally investigated. The Starlink contract, the $900 million contract, where there's nobody that's in sight that can actually serve and put a system in place that could provide internet. They voted it down on party lines at the FCC chair. And so that's the position we're in. It's political. It's difficult, but in the end, honestly, the government should look past it and say, I've got 350 million people to serve, and I need to call upon the best people to serve this government, to solve these critical challenges with AI, to solve this EV transition. And it's Elon Musk. He should be brought in. I think if they outreach and they show him that level of respect, I think things would cool off a bit. But quite frankly, you disrespect him, you punch at him, you investigate him, he's going to counterpunch back. And I quite frankly don't blame him.
All right. Thank you, everybody. So let's just recap what happened. You've got, oops, here we go. Got to reshare this again.
What do you think, Herbert? Before you go, I want to know what you think as well.
Oh, well, I already said it at the very beginning. I think it's atrocious. I think it's ridiculous that Biden administration did not invite Elon to the AI committee. In fact, it's even worse than that. 50% of the people of the organizations that were invited had nothing to do with AI. They're like some ridiculous corporations that have nothing to do. These are not the brains of the world that can solve the AI issues and privacy and security. So if they really, truly have the goal of AI security, safety, you would invite the right people. Elon is, if not the number one. So it's clearly a political issue. It's embarrassing that the US government is treating Tesla the way that they are when the entire world, including China, it's like, again, I said, it's the world is upside down, and it's just crazy. When China makes this deal with Tesla, this will turn around the rest of the world. They will have to make a deal with China, with Tesla at this point. And I think Robotaxi, as soon as China approves Robotaxi, the rest will do it too. Like, you can't let a country like China be able to get ahead in this technology. If they did, that would be a real shame. You will see the death of Ford and GM and others, and if they're already dying anyway. So I don't know. Sorry, is that what you wanted to hear?
Yep, that's it. You got it. Thank you.
All right. Well, so here's what happened today. Elon met with China, and they basically, a lot of things have been happening. And by the way, 8/8 is August 8th. There's a reason why they chose August 8th. That is a Chinese lucky number. There will be some big announcements, probably announced at that date, or maybe it's referring to this. So Tesla's FSD's entry into China, there's a lot of things that happened. The official media published Tesla's Vice President Grace Tao and Tesla China was out talking about autonomous driving. They were hinting about a big event on 8/8. Enhanced autopilot, the price in China was reduced to the same level as the US full self-driving, $99 per month, which probably indicates that that's the same price that they're going to sell full self-driving once that becomes available. And Tesla received in-principle approval to deploy its driver assistance system in China. They cleared 4 hurdles. It says here too, the mapping and navigation deal with Baidu. So that allows the mapping info to be a Chinese company being able to offer that to Tesla. Therefore, they can protect military zones and sensitive areas. And, data security and privacy, and approval for FSD should be coming soon. It's going to be a massive boost for Tesla, as we talked about here, the margin impact. But I believe, and I think many of us here believe, that this also means licensing. There will be Chinese companies, perhaps BYD, the second largest EV company, who has no efforts in AI, robotaxi right now, partners with Tesla. This is going to be big. There'll be 1, 2, there'll be many auto companies partnering now that they've opened this up in China, because the Chinese automakers, they're so focused on creating electric vehicles. They'll want to jump on this as soon as now that they're able to do this.
So
Any
you
last
mean
final comments?
August 8th? I thought it was 8/8 for 88 miles an hour. Back to the future, baby.
There you go. Could be. Could be. Okay, everybody. Thank you very much. Appreciate you guys joining us. Follow Brian Wang, Next Big Future. Jeff Lutz, of course, the man. Follow him at the Jeff Lutz, and Xander at R6Alex on X. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. Congratulations.